Hellcat.
This is Nicholas Kristof in South Sudan. Nyajok Garang is one of nearly 5 million people who cannot feed themselves here. We helped her into a government vehicle. She hadn't eaten in 3 days, so she walked dozens of miles from her village to the nearest city, Awil, hoping to find food or work. But she didn't make it. She's never been hungry before, she says, but with her husband off at war and a drought that stunted her harvest, she was so desperate that she fled, leaving her 2 children with neighbors. Will the neighbor feed them? The city's hospital offers images that President Obama won't see on his forthcoming trip to Africa. South Sudan will be high on his agenda, though, because the U.S. helped establish this country, and now it's collapsing in war, economic misery, and hunger. Its leaders have badly mismanaged the country, and their civil war caused this looming famine. Staple food prices have doubled. The next harvest is several months away. Memories of the horrific 1988 famine here are on everyone's mind. Does this remind you of 1988 a little bit?
Yes, it's going to be like that actually.
Dr. Dut Piot Ekot spent his career treating illness. Now his ward is overrun with casualties of war. Is this the worst you've seen it here?
Yes. I have never seen such cases like this actually. And the coming months, even the mortality will increase actually.
Does it have her hemoglobin level?
Yesterday.
Wow, she's almost dead. I mean, if 30-year-old farmer Abuk Aju Bol survives, Dr. Dut will release her. But he predicts she'll be back because the government isn't able to address the starvation crisis.
Abuk?
Starvation isn't a medical issue, so all he can do when they're discharged is give them petty cash from his own pocket.
We cannot solve this kind of problem actually. Is it always you can just come and put your hand to your pocket? It is very difficult actually.
It's common to see malnourished kids in such places. That every bit of energy goes into keeping their organs alive. They don't cry, they don't laugh, they don't do anything. But I'm always particularly alarmed when I see adults wasting away. That means famine is approaching. And if you're wondering where are the men, well, the culture dictates they get first dibs on food. In rural areas, the crisis isn't much better. We took a series of helicopters to reach these internal refugees. They're among the 1.5 million displaced South Sudanese, lucky enough to have escaped massacres with reports of rapes and castrations. They've settled near swampland because it's one of the only places without fighting. It's also without much food, unless you count the roots of water lilies, which keep them alive. UN agencies like the World Food Program reach them with temporary outposts that end in airdrops. $1,100 bags that will last several months. Sure, food drops are life-saving. But what's really needed, above all, is a major international effort to bring peace. I hope President Obama will push for that during his Africa trip. When you see starving people, your impulse is to think that they just need food. But South Sudanese can feed themselves if there is peace.
From above, Yida looks like one of the many villages in South Sudan where families have chosen to settle, where they stay busy with the routines and rhythms of everyday life. On closer inspection, however, you see this is not the case. Yida is populated by Sudanese refugees, tens of thousands of men, women, and children who fled fighting and deprivation in their homeland, only to find themselves in another inhospitable place, and their numbers are growing.
After a few weeks, beginning to the month of June, the number of refugees come increase to more than 60,000 in the camp. And you see in the few times, a lot of people come and in the bad condition.
Not everyone who set off from Sudan survived the journey. Those who made it to Yida arrived weakened and vulnerable, particularly the children and the elderly. MSF has been responding to the medical needs in the area since people started coming from Sudan last fall. As the population grew, MSF sent more staff to Yida, where they are working around the clock, consulting with patients, carrying out vaccination campaigns, and rushing to treat malnutrition, diarrhea, respiratory tract infections, and malaria, conditions that can be fatal if not treated in time. There is enough food in the camp, but diarrhea is so pervasive that children become malnourished. MSF has therefore established several feeding programs. But the worry remains for the people here, and not everyone gets the treatment they need in time, something an MSF nurse addressed last month.
A mortality rate that would be reasonable in a context like this with mostly malnourished children. You look at a project like that, you would expect a mortality rate under 10% for an inpatient department like this. Our mortality rate in the past few weeks has reached as high as 24%, which is frightening and a very difficult figure. And that's sad.
Much of this can be attributed to the conditions in the camps, specifically the lack of clean and safe water. MSF is helping people find clean water, even drilling wells, but more needs to be done. There is a shortage of latrines as well, and despite ongoing distributions from the World Food Program and others, the arrival of the rainy season is exacerbating the shortcomings of the conditions. In these conditions, the people in Yida are struggling to maintain some semblance of a normal life. But their future is shrouded in doubt, uncertainty the only constant. As long as this remains the case, MSF, with the generous assistance of its supporters, will continue doing everything it can to provide urgently needed medical services to the Sudanese refugees now fighting to survive in South Sudan.